On behalf of the Checkers or Wreckers podcast family, we send our deepest condolences to Jimmy Johnson and his family after this tough tragedy as of recently. Join me in a moment of silence as we honor those who have been lost. Thank you. On with the episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Checkers or Wreckers podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Carter Leonard, and we have a lot to talk about on today's show, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again just me on this show, ladies and gentlemen, so I hope you guys enjoy today's episode. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, ladies and gentlemen. This past weekend, the three National Touring Series of NASCAR traveled to Nashville for their annual trip to the Nashville Superspeedway, and let's just say it was a pretty action-packed weekend, to say the least. So let's just jump right into the recap of the weekend, ladies and gentlemen, and that we start with the Truck Series. It was the Rackley Roofing 200, and Carson Hocevar for Nice Motorsports picks up his second win of the season. Man, can we just acknowledge the fact how big of a run Carson Hocevar has been on for like the past month and a half. We got to go back to April 1st. I mean, he finally got the monkey off his back. He picked up his first career Truck Series win at Texas, and a lot of people were questioning, if that win happened to be a fluke or, if he just got lucky, which, some would agree that win was lucky, but not this time. Nope, he beat up everyone by just straight up using speed, and he was the winner at Nashville Superspeedway for his second win of the year. It was a pretty solid truck race, to say the least. But yeah, congrats to Carson Hocevar, looking like a potential championship favorite, if I had to be quite honest. But we'll see how the rest of the season goes for him. Up next, we have the Xfinity Series race that was on Saturday. It was the Tennessee Lottery 250, and AJ Allmendinger picked up another win in the Xfinity Series this year, running a part-time schedule for Colleague Racing. He already picked up a win earlier in the year at Circuit of the Americas. Oh, shocker. AJ Allmendinger winning on the road course. That's nothing shocking at all. But this time he wins on an oval with Bailey Zimmerman, country singer, on the car. I can't really consider myself a country singer, or a country fan, I should say. I'm not a country singer. What am I talking about? But anyways, besides him winning the race, the Xfinity Series race was quite interesting. Mainly because of the track conditions. We saw early in the race, and we even had a lap one wreck. Track conditions were very, very slick. There were a lot of incidents, especially on restarts, and it just seemed like early in the race that we just couldn't get a green flag run going, but we eventually did, and the race went on, and it was fine by itself. It was a battle between colleague cars at the end, between AJ Allmendinger and young Chandler Smith, who looked like he might get his second win of the year, but fell short to his much faster teammate. There was even... The 10 car was involved in the lap 1 wreck, and he had a bit of right rear quarter damage. Now, I'm not going to assume that it helped the car because, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't help the car with, aerodynamics. But whatever happened after that wreck, it definitely helped the 10 car win the race. So congrats to AJ Allmendinger, and I'm sure him and Bailey Zimmerman were chugging beers at the end of that race. Now we get to the main event, the Sunday night race. It was the Ally 400 at Nashville Superspeedway. Ross Chastain I know you guys are tired of hearing us bring him up, but Ross Chastain, he's on the good side of things as he picked up his first win of this season, ladies and gentlemen. But we'll get to Ross Chastain here in a minute. The race itself was very, very interesting. There was even a very interesting crash that we will also talk about later in the show. But the racing was, for what Nashville Superspeedway is, it was a very, very solid race. There was a lot of three wide racing actually on some restarts. I think they were like three wide for maybe like 2 laps after a certain restart. I can't remember who exactly was up front, but the racing itself was pretty solid for what it was. I give it like an 8 out of 10 if we were rating races on this show, but alas, we don't. But anyways, that is the Nashville weekend recap. But like I said, we are going to talk about Ross Chastain here for a second. During the NBC broadcast, and mainly the pre-race show, they kept on asking what kind of Ross Chastain are we going to see in this race or the next several races before we head to the playoffs. And, well, we saw the race winning Ross Chastain, and he didn't win the race in a controversial fashion. He straight up had a fast car, got up to the front, led the rest of the way, and ended up taking his first win of the year. That's the Ross Chastain that we should be seeing. And we have seen earlier in the year that Ross Chastain got himself into some pretty big, shenanigans. Some are his fault, some of his aren't. But as we see Ross Chastain this season, we are just questioning, oh man, can this inconsistency go away? Now, ever since he had that little kerfuffle with Noah Gragson at Kansas, he has been so inconsistent. He only has picked up one top 10 after that moment, and that was at Sonoma before we headed into the off week. But I believe Justin Marks and Ross Chastain possibly had that sit down, and it got Ross Chastain the victory lane. Now, time will tell if he can keep up the race-winning speed. Now, we all know that Trackhouse Racing, and especially Ross Chastain, has that race-winning speed, but can he just stay out of the shenanigans? That's all we are going to wonder at this time. But as of right now, the Ross Chastain that we saw on Sunday night was the race-winning Ross Chastain, and that is one that we should be seeing on a week-to-week basis. And that will do it for the Ross Chastain talk. But I do want to bring up a certain topic, and that is regarding the a certain crash that happened, and it was a checkup restart crash with Ryan Blaney hitting a concrete inside wall. Now, for many who did watch the race on Sunday night, there was a huge checkup on the restart where Brad Keselowski did not get going on the restart. It checked up everyone, and Ryan Blaney was unfortunate enough to spin down the grass and hit a concrete wall that's in the inside of turn 1. He got hit from behind by Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch did not have any time to slow down, and Blaney just went along for the ride. And Blaney looked to be shook up after the wreck. He said it was one of the hardest, if not the hardest hit that he has ever had in his career so far. As a race fan, that is completely unacceptable. There should be safer barrier at that part of the track. I don't know why there are... See, and it's not just Nashville Superspeedway either. There are multiple racetracks that the Cup Series will go to every year, and there are some tracks that just don't have safer barrier on their walls. I believe Gateway doesn't have... Correct me if I'm wrong, they do not have safer barrier on their inside wall on like the front stretch. I know Indianapolis Raceway Park, they don't have safer barrier in certain parts of the track, mainly the backstretch inside, which is completely concrete. In my opinion, there should be safer barrier everywhere on every part of track. or at least some form of like tiger barrier or something like that. Um, and I remember Kyle, and there was an interview with Kyle Busch after the race on that at Nashville. He said something on the lines of, "If you give us the chance to if you give us the chance to let us hit at an obscure angle on the part of the racetrack, we're probably gonna hit it at least once." And he's not wrong. There have been some races over the past few years where drivers hit obscure angles in the track. I mean, it's happened before, and it's probably guaranteed to happen again. I mean, we've all seen, we saw the Blaney hit. Hell, I mean, go back to 2002 where Mike Harmon hit the gate of the gate at Bristol. Granted, that's off. Granted, that was in turn two, and now it's moved to turn three. But who's to say someone can't hit that again? You never know, dude. It's just gonna. It's just, you know, it's just the danger part of the sport. And yeah, I was glad that Ryan Blaney was not hurt after that incident, and he was even asked if they should put safer barrier down in that part of the racetrack, which the obvious answer should be yes. But Ryan Blaney even claimed that he will pay for it himself, which, I mean, that's Ryan Blaney's word, not mine. I'm not going to say a whole lot about it, but we see that Brian Blaney was very visibly upset, and he has every right. He has every right to be. Trust me, you know, he has every right to be upset. If I was a race car driver and I hit at a wall that's really not too safe, and the track didn't do anything about it until now, who's to say I wouldn't be upset too? So, yeah, glad Blaney wasn't hurt. And hopefully when we go back to Nashville Superspeedway next year, and hopefully multiple other tracks, that this is a lesson that, we need to have a lot more safer barrier around every single part, every single wall of the racetrack, to make sure that hits like that don't happen, because it looked to be, although, looking at the replay, although it didn't look like that he was going it doesn't look like that he was going too fast, but it was a pretty decent hit. I mean, I can only imagine what like a wreck on the freeway must be like with those concrete walls. So, that's probably what Blaney must have felt. But glad Blaney was okay. But just Nashville and other tracks who are lacking safer barriers, please, please put those in. And we're getting into our final Nashville topic, ladies and gentlemen. And that is a Twitter account called Nashville CARE. Now, what is Nashville CARE exactly, and why am I bringing it up? To many people who are watching this, you may think that it might sound like an insurance company. Well, you'd be wrong. Nashville CARE is a quote unquote movement to stop taxpayers from pouring in $160 million into the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Basically, it's a caring account. I've said this multiple times, maybe not on this podcast, but I've said it multiple times. If you don't like the noise of a racetrack or the vibrating sounds of cars going around, then maybe you shouldn't move near a racetrack. Oh, well, I have my rights. First of all, do people all of a sudden not look at areas before they move into a racetrack? Like, well, not move into a racetrack, but I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up here. But do people not look at areas before moving into that said house or apartment? Like, that should literally be like the first thing that you should do before moving into a moving into that place. You got to make sure that the area is safe. And I bet that now if these people did look at the area but then looked at the racetrack and went, oh, Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, I wonder what they do there. Yeah, it's not like they hold weekly races there or about to hold the biggest stock car brand in the history of America. No, No, that's definitely not what they do. No. But I'm going to read off some tweets, ladies and gentlemen, of um, what this account does. It's pretty sad, to say the least. So, their official Twitter account is Nashville CARE, and that is a capital CARE. Um, um, and they are absolutely brain dead when it comes to things like this. So, they even made a tweet where it's like, um, we can't wait to spend 160 million in Nashville taxpayer dollars to subsidize this thriving sport, and it's a photo of them watching a Nashville race on TV, but it's not the Cup race, might I add. It's the Xfinity Series race, which obviously Xfinity Series races, as we know it, don't sell out like Cup races do. And by the way, the Nashville Cup Series race this past Sunday was a complete sellout. I mean, the front stretch grandstands were like literally packed. It was hard to find any sort of, little silver patch of like empty grandstands. But obviously, you could see, it's easier with the Xfinity series. But, obviously, they get their information wrong. Another tweet is that they screenshot a tweet of a NASCAR tweet saying the loudest show in Nashville is about to start. And they say NASCAR races are loud and an interesting NASCAR Twitter delete. Don't know what that means exactly. And they also tweeted the thunderous noise and harmful emissions from a racetrack would disrupt our peaceful living. Again, maybe move out of the racetrack then. And by the way, even if even if NASCAR does not return to Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, you're still going to have weekly racing there. That track is like, it's an historical landmark. It's been there for over a century now. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway was built in 1904. It started out, I believe, as like a horse racing track, but then it became an automobile racing track, and you know, it's the rest is history. But yeah, like you're still gonna have weekly racing there. And by the way, those late model cars, those late model stocks, pro late models, that go there, the Cars Tour. I believe the Cars Tour goes to Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. I apologize for all the late model fans out there, but those cars are definitely not as loud as cup cars. So if you're already bitching about those, oh my friend, you are in a rude awakening. I can go all day with this account. Bristol Motorsports can walk away from the racetrack deal. They're not going to do that simply because that they are trying to make the deal happen. Like, and by the way, it's the company is not called Bristol Motorsports. I believe the company that you are referring to is Speedway Motorsports Incorporated, or SMI for short. So get your facts straight. Um, I love this comment right here. So there are like 20 of you, and y'all moved next to a racetrack, and now complaining about the said racetrack being noisy. Did you complain about the fair at being at the fairgrounds too? Like literally, dude. Like you knew what you should have gained a look of common sense and figured out what went on at that racetrack. Like, I don't understand why this is obviously I am not a Nashville resident, but and I don't live near a racetrack, but I don't understand how people are surprised by all of the loud noise that goes on there. Like, did you expect the cars to be electric or some shit? Like, and I hate the cuss. Trust me, I hate the cuss on the show. I try to keep it professional as possible, but how do you expect to live near a racetrack and yet you can't handle the noise? Like I said, you shouldn't have moved there. And if a Karen says, "Well, you need to mind your own damn business," okay, well, continue dealing with the track then. You know. Don't forget the Karen people. People, don't forget the Karen that said there are 5 perfectly operating Formula One tracks outside of Nashville. I would like an F1 Nashville street race, but we're going to Vegas. Um, should Nashville make a 30-year, $160 million commitment without public funding to a dying sport? Well, here we go with the dying sport stuff. Obviously, it's see, the problem with this statement is that um the sport's not as popular as it once was. We all know this, right? It's not NASCAR's not that mainstream media sport like it was to the early mid 2000s, but the sport still has its hardcore fans. It's still making millions of dollars each and every year. So, if you know what, I don't consider NASCAR to be a dying sport. I mean, yeah, there's some changes to the sport that a lot of people don't like, and I can fully understand that. But at the same time, that we have to, the positives have to outweigh the negatives, and I think, we still have a lot of positives in the tank. So, Nashville CARE, I have to say this once and for all. There are only um, a certain amount of people in your reign, while there are hundreds and thousands of race fans who want to see this happen. You are just outnumbered. And listen, I understand that, disrupting peace in the neighborhoods are a bad thing. But at the same time, and I've said it multiple times, and this is the last time I'm going to say this. You chose to move in that area where a very, very, very popular racetrack to the locals has been for longer than your grandparents have been alive. Like, I don't get why this is a major surprise to you guys. Oh my god, like I'm trying to, like I'm not, I'm sorry if I keep pausing for you guys. And by the way, this is not filler for this episode. I just want to point that out. But I needed to talk about this because the amount of stupid things that this account is saying is outwardly insane. It already passed the Metro Council through a 3-2 vote. It already passed the Fair Board at a 3-2 vote. Now it just needs to go. Now it just needs to be fully approved, and construction could get right underway with this track. The chances of us getting back to the fairgrounds are more likely to happen. But the Karens are going to try to do everything they can to make sure this race doesn't happen. But it's going to. As a NASCAR fan, I am fully confident that the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway will return in some capacity. I don't care if it's a truck or Xfinity or just a cup race. It is going to return some way, somehow, whether we like it or not. Well, I would like it, per se. But it's going to happen. Karens, you are being outnumbered. Get over yourself and maybe not move to a race, and maybe not move to an area where it's pretty loud and noisy. Like, I don't know I doubt neighborhoods have Yelp reviews. I highly doubt that. But if they did, and if all the Yelp reviews said, this place is noisy and loud, and you decided to move there, you're an idiot. Like, you are an absolute moron. Oh, but the house looks nice. I don't care. Be smarter, not harder. Ugh. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I had to get that one off my chest. Now we have our final Nashville topic to talk about, and that is the Sheldon Creed behavioral penalty. From this past weekend's Xfinity Series race, Sheldon Creed and Sammy Smith ended up getting in the wreck in turns 1 and 2. If you haven't seen that particular wreck, I suggest that you go look it up right now to see why Sheldon Creed potentially got that penalty. Now I've seen. Now I was watching that race live, and I saw the wreck unfold. And initially, I didn't think that Sheldon Creed dumped Sammy Smith intentionally at first. Um, it looked like that Sheldon Creed was trying to make a dive bomb move, but then kind of lost it and looked like that he was about to shoot up the racetrack, and then Sammy Smith was just in the wrong spot, wrong time, and then they ended up wrecking. But no, NASCAR actually showed the world audio from a previous restart with him and Sammy Smith. I believe Sammy was trying to cut down in front of him or something like that, and Sheldon didn't like it, and he says, uh, I don't know exactly what Sheldon Creed said, but he did say something about, if I get back to him, I'm going to right hook him. And even his crew chief, I believe his name is Jeff Stankiewicz, they were like, NASCAR is going to penalize you if you do that. Even his own team is begging him to not poke the bear, to not do anything stupid, but Sheldon Creed ended up doing it, and it ended up ending Sammy Smith. And I don't know if Sheldon Creed did that from that. I'm not really remember, but it ended Sammy Smith's day, and Sammy Smith was rightly upset. He wasn't too outwardly angry, but I know something internal was fuming inside. So now he has suffered a behavioral penalty, and he has been docked about 25 driver's points. Now we have to ask ourselves, did NASCAR make the right move? And why I'm asking this is simply because of the fact of, the right hooking thing we have seen, or hooking drivers in general, we have seen has not been tolerated. Now, obviously, this one didn't really deserve a suspension. It's not as bad as like right hooking to someone in the wall like Chase Elliott did to Denny Hamlin in the Coke 600, but it's obviously it's not a good thing. That's all I gotta say. But Sheldon Creed, I think, deserves this penalty. He's thankful that it wasn't a suspension by any means necessary. Now, granted, like I said, I don't think it deserved to be a suspension. But Sheldon, please do better, bro. And don't, if you're gonna do something intentionally, you better not say it outwardly out loud on the radio, which is what 99.9% of drivers do when they're trying to get retaliation back. That's just stupid, because NASCAR could hear every team's radio, and they'll record that, and they'll be like, hey, you know what? That's a no-no. Please don't do that. So, Sheldon, do better. Now, let's get into another topic, ladies and gentlemen, as we have a penalty appeal update, and it is regarding the 43 team of Erik Jones. After illegally modifying the greenhouse, they sent in their appeal, and it was upheld. So Erik Jones and the 43 team from Legacy Motor Club still hold that penalty. Really not surprised here after the modify. Now, I don't know exactly what part of the greenhouse they exactly modified, so to speak, but whatever they did, NASCAR saw it, and it was a big no-no. Now, a lot of new race fans might ask themselves, what exactly is the greenhouse exactly? Well, the greenhouse is mainly the roof of the car and where the driver is sitting at inside the car. That is the greenhouse. And like I said, I don't know what specific part of the car that they changed inside that part of the chassis, but yeah, it clearly made their season even worse. But clearly made their time even worse, I should say. Their season was already going bad. But actually, speaking of Erik Jones, he actually got a top 10 at Nashville. How about that? Again, we've mentioned about Legacy Motor Club in this, on this show before, and how it has been a truly pathetic season. Like, it has been, like, I remember, Noah Gragson saying that I can't wait to move on to the off season. And you know what? A lot of people are like, oh, well, he was probably saying, he meant to say the off week, but if he actually meant to say the off season, could you really blame him? I mean, this season is a complete waste. Legacy Motor Club, they obviously have nothing left to lose. Um, and that's honestly a really big shame. They're just ready to take off to take off the Chevy Camaro, to trade in their Chevy Camaros for a Toyota Camrys, and they're just ready for a new clean slate in 2024. And quite frankly, I can't blame them. I hope this team succeeds, but this season, like I mentioned before, is a complete waste. And you know, obviously there's still a lot left season to go, but as far as the playoffs are concerned, they are done. Last time Noah Gragson, he's still currently sitting 32nd in points, and although Erik Jones is doing slightly better, it's not really holding a lot of moral high ground when it comes to performance. You know, it's just a wash. Now let's get into probably the longest topic of the show, ladies and gentlemen, and it is regarding NASCAR's first ever Chicago street course race. Oh boy. This is probably one of the most anticipated weekends of stock car racing than I can remember in a long time. There are so many predictions, so many unknowns, so many variables that are going to, there's just so much to talk about when it comes to this race. Um, I remember. So before we get into this weekend, we have to take a step back, and we have to take a step back to 2021, and this was during the days of the iRacing Pro Invitational Series during the COVID days of NASCAR, and we saw the first ever Chicago street course, and it was run with the next gen cars on iRacing, and I believe that was in my opinion, I didn't know it at the time, but it was probably the nail in the coffin when we talked about potential street course races in the future of NASCAR, and we're finally getting one, and it happens to be the iRacing layout. When I first saw this, idea of a street course race, I thought it was a pretty exciting idea, but then I realized, wait, we're going to go to Chicago, but why not go back to Chicagoland? I mean, that only makes sense, right? And Chicagoland's obviously in Joliet. But back to the real life thing. There are so many things that I can say about this weekend, and there's so many predictions that I have. It could be a really good race, it could be really successful, or it could be an utter, mess. It could be a complete wreck fest, and we might end up with some outlandish winner. And that goes for both races too, because keep in mind the Xfinity and Cup race. They're the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. They're both here this weekend. There are just so many things that we can expect from this weekend that I could go on and on. I could go on for like 2 hours about what can I expect from this weekend. We look at obviously there's this race took off in my opinion, a very successful racetrack in its 2-year operation in the Cup Series, that being Road America. Now the Xfinity Series is going to Road America this year, just not the Cup Series, and I find that to be very, very upsetting because I did like Road America for what it was. It was a very cool racetrack to watch, but it's a very interesting thing to talk about. But no, going back to the Chicago street course, what do I think will happen? And this, I've been at, I have a lot of race fan friends around me who keep asking me, "Yo, Carter, what's your expectation for this weekend? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's going to be a good race?" Here's what I think. I think no matter what happens, I think this race is going to be a one and done deal. Yeah, there are I can't speak for every Chicago citizen who has feelings about this race, but there's a good majority of people that don't like it, and some of it is Chicago citizens, and hell, it's some of it is even race fans in of itself. Now, I do like the idea of a street course race in the Cup Series. I think we've seen the success of what IndyCar has done. IndyCar does a bunch of street course races, and we've seen the turnout for those. But we got to ask ourselves, is Chicago the right place to do it? Obviously, Chicago is a very, very big market, and we've seen Chicago sports. The Blackhawks, the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls team owner, well, not team owner, former player is a NASCAR team owner now, and Daniel Suarez actually brought up a very, very good point, and he said there are two ways to do things. We bring fans to the racetrack, or we bring the racetrack to the fans. That's exactly what a street course is, and I think the event is going to be amazing. And you know what? I'm not saying that the Chicago street course is not going to have any positives to it. I think it's a big event. I believe. We've seen NASCAR try out new big events. The Clash at the LA Coliseum. Bringing back North Wilkesboro. There's rumors of bringing back Rockingham as of right now. NASCAR is doing a lot of big things right now, and the Chicago Street Course is obviously no stranger to it. Do I think there's going to be some goofy things going on? Yeah, I would expect some goofy moments to happen. Would I be surprised if it's a calm race for both? Honestly, no. Maybe this whole predictions about it's going to be a crappy race might be blown out of proportion, and we may see a very, very successful race. Now, I think it could probably tap into new markets when it comes to street course race. There's even rumors of Seattle, Denver possibly getting a street course race. How about that? A street course race at Mile High. That'd be pretty cool. But I think this is going to be a true test to see not only how it works in a big market, but also how it works racing wise. Because, we've seen the Chicago Street Course track. It looks very tight in those corners. Not the best passing opportunities, I must say, but we'll definitely see, how that goes this upcoming weekend. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are heading down to the end of our show. Definitely a longer episode than last week. Last week's episode, the reason why last week's episode was so short, ladies and gentlemen, was simply because of the fact of there was a whole lot to talk about, and I only got it done in less than 30 minutes. But not today. Not today. This is a pretty decent long episode. We're going to try to get, very longer episodes as the season goes along, especially when playoff time comes. Don't worry, guys. We're making big things happen. We're making big things happen. But let's get into our first ever Chicago Street Course race picks, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, so many unknowns for this weekend's race. Tomorrow, it is the NASCAR Xfinity Series race from the Chicago Street Course. It is the Loop 121. Both of these races don't really have a primary sponsor. It's not like the Dead On Tools 121 or the McDonald's 220. No. It's nothing like that. It's just a fancy saying and a mileage behind it. So it is the Loop 121 for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. It is their 16th race of the year. Now, what do we see? What are we going to see, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to see a road course winner win it, which I don't know if AJ Allmendinger is running the race. I would have to check. Give me 1 second, people. I'm trying to look at the entry list as of right now. I actually forgot. I don't typically forget these people. I'm sorry. I want to say that he is in the Xfinity Series race, but I don't know. No, he is not. The 10 car is actually for Justin Marks this weekend. So, I believe. Oh, correct me if I'm wrong. The Cup drivers cannot run the Xfinity Series race for some reason. I just remember that they will not. They cannot run the Xfinity Series race for some odd reason. I don't exactly remember why. But let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. But who am I picking, ladies and gentlemen? Who am I picking to win the Xfinity Series race at the Chicago Street Course? This driver is typically a solid road course racer, and he actually won a road course race earlier this year, and it's his only win of the season. Ladies and gentlemen, give me Cole Custer to win the Loop 121 at the Chicago Street Course. Now let's get into the probably one of the most anticipated events in NASCAR this season. It is the Grant Park 220, ladies and gentlemen. We could either see a really good race where, a pretty normal winner gets it done, or we could see a really big crapshoot race and an underdog gets the win. I'm going to say it's a crapshoot race and an underdog gets the win. Now, is it going to be a veteran or is it going to be a rookie like, I don't know, maybe Ty Gibbs, for example? But I do expect another road course winner to win this race, ladies and gentlemen. And that driver is none other than AJ Allmendinger. That is right. I am picking AJ Allmendinger to win the Xfinity Series race at the Chicago Street Course. I may regret this decision entirely, but, we have seen, you just never doubt what AJ Allmendinger could do on a street course. We saw how fast he was at Sonoma, with his road racing experience. It would be stupid to not add him at least in your fantasy. So, AJ Allmendinger is my Cup Series pick for the Grant Park 220 and probably the only ever Chicago Street Course race. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for today's episode of the Checkers or Wreckers podcast. It is episode 20, ladies and gentlemen. This is a huge milestone on the show. We have already hit 20 episodes. That is crazy to believe. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. This is Carter Leonard, your host, and I will see you guys next week as we talk about what's to come at Atlanta. Enjoy the races this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.